How's everyone doing? I got my spiced rum. Oh no. Oh no. I didn't grab any more. Woo! Woo! That is what I call a terrible mixer. That's a bit more rum, not as much Coke. I have to steal some from my beverage. Okay. Okay. Not requested. Nothing. Just decided to do it because I decided I want to do something different. I don't know why I'm doing that. Anyways, Farmers to Raiders, the mysterious origins of the... I have a fly flying around here, and it's really pissing me. I'm gonna punch him if he lands. If I throw a punch, I'm trying to punch this stupid fly. Goddamn fly! Pay the bills. All right, this is a 52-minute video. I'm gonna break it down into 4 videos. So that's 13 minutes. So we're on the clock. Video time.
Their flames were burning. They were soon to conquer their world.
Woo. Woo.
They are not yet a nation, and no single ruler will command their troops. Still, for some time, they will call on their pagan gods to give them strength and prosperity. But soon their voices will be heard in distant lands, and others will fear and admire, love and hate them. Steadfast, their axes will shape the ships that will bring their people across Europe, into Asia, and to lands yet unknown beyond the horizon to the west. Stories will be told and retold over centuries, their sagas sending messages over millennia. When people see their ships coming, they will either be very impressed or very frightened.
Yeah, frightened for sure.
The dragon has come for its prey, and its wings will fly in the wind and carry men across oceans.
I think they were at least down to New York. I think they were down to Florida, maybe into Mexico.
They will be known to the world as Vikings.
The Vikings have always had a bad press in European history, in part because they had a tendency to burn down the newspaper office by attacking monasteries and other centers of literacy, and this, of course, didn't get them a good write-up.
Their names forever etched into the history of places both near and far. Death and destruction. The trails of some Vikings end in a dark vault in Copenhagen, perhaps as a legacy of their violent past.
We have the remains of about 450 Norse Vikings from Greenland. At one of the early, probably one of the most early churchyards in North Greenland, there's a mass grave with 13 individuals, completely dismembered, bones completely jumbled up, with the skulls arranged nicely along one edge of the grave, and several of the skulls had very violent cut marks from either swords or axes.
Jesus.
Maybe the obvious signs of a violent life are only distracting us from the other, and possibly more truthful story about a culture that rose above others and reigned for half a millennium. This was once a man who worked the land in distant Greenland. His remains, and those of other men, women, and children who settled on an Arctic coast, adds a chapter to an astonishing story of survival and heroism. Every bone now reads like the chapter out of a book, giving scientists insight into daily life 1,000 years ago.
When we look at the skeletons, we can certainly see that nutrition, at least at the beginning of the settlement period, was okay. We don't see any overt signs of malnutrition.
So I'm guessing that's going back to their farmer days. So if that's the case, what made them turn to raiders? I mean, I'm just saying, going from a farmer to a conqueror, because that's pretty much what I mean. They were ass kickers. So to go from a farmer to that seems like a big leap, unless they were always just, tough people, which I'm sure they were.
But the story begins in Scandinavia, in the year 750 AD, at one of the many small farms and villages along the coasts and waterways.
AD.
Even though the people involved were often blonde Scandinavians, the term Viking is not an ethnic term and cannot be taken for any national identity. There are also Slavic Vikings, Irish Vikings, and to go Viking is more a term for an activity that was carried out by this diverse group of people living in Northern Europe at the time.
When I hear Viking, I don't think Slavic or Ireland, or it's just kind of like one big group. And I know that they're all different. But to me, that was just kind of like, that was a people. Like that was, like the Irish. If the Vikings came from Ireland, then the Irish would be Vikings. Like it was just one country of people. That's what it always was to me. So that's just kind of what I felt like, or that's just what I thought. I haven't been drinking very long, okay? I apologize.
And Arab emissaries traveling to the north were both surprised and frightened by what they saw.
They are the filthiest of God's creatures. Every day they must wash their faces and heads, and this they do in the dirtiest and filthiest fashion possible,
writes Ibn Fadlan in 922, also noting that they, to his surprise, comb their hair every day.
Well, they were probably working, farming, so they're dirty.
Because of the thousands of miles of coastline, seafaring activities have been part of a cultural heritage long before the Viking time. The rich fishery along the Atlantic coast was the base for many important settlements.
Do your sheets have these?
Did you know that traditional sheets are covered in bodily
Tell me
excrements?
more. Oh, she's gone.
And farms in the area were self-sufficient and affluent, with dwellings for extended families. Gold, silver, glass, and textiles. The Vikings proudly expressed their beauty and status in original art. But more than anything, they were farmers, peacefully tilling the land and clearing the forests for agriculture. And at most big farms there was a boatyard. Over a few months, a new boat would take shape. Based on a boat-building tradition with roots going back hundreds of years, the craftsmen developed ships that would forever change the face of history. And in the houses, women would use the standing loom to weave the dragon's wings, the mighty sails that gave the ships extraordinary power. The Vikings were proud of their ships, and artists made sure that the impression was lost on none. But were they truthful, or did they allow for artistic freedom when depicting the ships? Modern boat builders and maritime archaeologists have been puzzled for a long time over the depicted rigs of the Viking ships.
Why would they lie about that? I mean, it would seem accurate. What would you gain by lying about it?
In trying to reconstruct the boats and make them sailworthy, history has offered little help.
We have a problem with the Viking ship finds. You see, most of the finds have been done on very shallow water or along the coastline, and in places where the local people have been able to get at the ships and steal all the ship's gear out of them. And in consequence, we will find no oars, no rudders, no sails, no mast, no nothing of the gear belonging to the ship.
Only a few Viking ships have been found, and finds have often only consisted of scattered planks and parts of the rigging. By carefully piecing together the remains, Ole Krumlin Pedersen and his colleagues can draw the conclusion that the Viking ship fleet was surprisingly diverse.
I'm sure they had a different ship for different needs. That would make sense to me.
The bulky cargo ship known as a Knar had 950 square feet of sail and became the freighter along the Vikings' trading routes. There are the small ships used for fishing, ferrying, and short local travel. The longboat, powered by sail and oars, is the warship dragon of the sagas, built to put fear into enemies.
Probably carried a lot of people.
I'm personally very much attracted by the combination of aesthetics and functionality, and this is the supreme expression of that.
And the Danish scientists were lucky to find several sunken Viking ships.
The 5 Viking ships from Skuldelev are extraordinary in the sense that here we have 5 different types of ships from the late Viking Age, from the 11th century, representing 5 different types of ships and different origins. 1 ship from Ireland, 2 from Western Norway, and 2 from Denmark.
It was left to Max Wiener and Eric Anderson to figure out how the ships were sailed, and they look at every hole and every detail to understand their functions. Wear and tear around the holes indicates the former direction of ropes and rigging details.
In a way, you have to be a sailor yourself to understand all the clues you find in the finds, for example, and so on. That's very important.
And as practical sailors, they didn't search for answers in books. They took to the sea.
The tradition of the single square sail has in fact continued for more than 1,000 years in northern Norway, where they, up to the First Great War, actually sailed little Viking ships for the Lofoten fishery.
Among many things, finding a hole in the boat and understanding how it was used as part of the rig and sailing gave Eric and Max the final clues. Suddenly, it all made sense, and the sail of Viking times could be recreated.
Friends would walk up to me and just be like, "What the f is in your mug?"
Oh, that's inappropriate.
And I'll just tell them it's mud.
That's terrible. It's outrageously
drinking tons of coffee.
inappropriate. We don't need to see that. Okay, video time.
Adding the sail to a hull form people had used in this part of the world for hundreds of years was probably the single most important factor in establishing Viking rule. Suddenly, a world of trade opened up. The biggest ships were capable of transporting as much as 40 tons, most often in wooden barrels, but also in the form of people and farm animals. Despite this, the ship, with a draft of only 5 feet, could enter shallow harbors.
Wow.
And at this place in northern Germany, where only fields remain today, a town known as Hytheby grew to become a powerhouse of the Viking world.
This is the first town, and in this town we have a very special town architecture, so that it is possible that a lot...
I'm going to stop this here and I'm going to go back to the beginning part of it. As I said, I'm going to break this down into 4 13-minute videos, so it's easier for me to be able to do them and get them out, because I'm trying to shorten things down a little bit so I can at least get videos done. So I'm going to end this here. Like and subscribe. Hit your friend with the spider. And floss with bear traps. Have a good day. Have a good night.